Valentine's Day to everybody.
Are we giving out free chocolate today?
Sure, we'll just throw that out to all the people.
We have it in the office every day.
Ah, every day's Valentine's Day for you over there, huh? Survive. They're all like coming in at once. Welcome, welcome. Just me. I'm hearing so much type. Okay, I guess we should get started. Welcome everybody, my name is Sony York and today's topic is tips for fewer clicks. Now, when you're doing your Spitfire work, I'm sure you're clicking on the mouse a lot. And by the way, when I say click on the mouse, I also mean tab if you're using Spitfire on your tablet, but I'm just going to use the word click all the time. And as you go through your day, you need to click. You need to click on options, you need to click on fields, you need to just do a lot of clicking. So wouldn't it be great if you could get your work done with just a fewer clicks so you wouldn't have to be click, click, click all the time? And yes, there are some, I think, simple options and configurations that you can all do to reduce the number of clicking that you need to do in a workday. There are certain types of tasks that can be automated by Spitfire. Basically, those are things that happen, that's something that you choose every time that certain conditions are true. Okay, so Spitfire would know what to do and when to do it. And there's also things that you can set as defaults. So you would, if you're choosing something most of the time, maybe you want to set defaults so that most of the time people don't have to choose anything at all. And it just takes a little bit of configuration. If you are going to be the one doing these configurations, if you're the system admin, there is a process for doing so. And while this webinar is geared, I guess, a little bit more toward the people who can actually make these changes, it's actually for all. If you're not somebody who can, is someone who uses it. Thing that you want to be automated, then you'd be able to go to either your system admin person or to support to us. Now, we have a lot of configuration want to use for this particular configuration. We're going to be looking at different tools and tools that you might be using as predefined routes, template library, code maintenance, rule maintenance, workflow script library, JavaScript code. These are all tools that can be used to automate some processes that you do. If you're the one working on this, you would want to test piece, you set it up and then actually test it, make sure it's working. So now I'm going to be showing you many examples. However, what I'm not going to include in today's webinar are automation through workflow scripts or JavaScripts. And this is because those two topics are just a little bit more involved and therefore we've already done whole webinars on each of them. If you want to learn more about workflow scripts, we have the December 2017 webinar that's still up out there. There's a link there. And if you want to see JavaScripts, we did a webinar in May 2018. Okay, so what I'm going to be showing you here today are the tools that are right in Spitfire that any system admin certainly should be able to do. Now, as I am showing you these examples, and I'm kind of doing it as a situation specific and then sort of the solution, as we're going through this, you may be thinking of something else that's not quite addressed, but gives you ideas of what you might be able to do, and that's good too. And feel free to jot down any ideas that you have while we're going through this webinar in terms of your needs, something that might actually help you. Okay, like I said, I'm doing examples. All right, so the first situation is having documents that don't need to be routed anywhere, that end up in your inbox. And so then you have to go in there and route them out of your inbox. Now, this may happen because Spitfire creates the document automatically. For example, as you see in the picture there, revenue from a change order, expense from a change order, it's creating some budget documents, and somebody is getting them in their inbox. And those are ones that maybe don't need to be routed and don't need to be in anyone's inbox, but they're showing up anywhere. Or maybe you are someone who creates documents that don't need to be routed anywhere. You work on them yourself, and they don't need to be in the inbox at any point. So what do? The solution here is to add to your auto accept route on the routes tool. And let me go into Spitfire and tell you a little bit more about that. Okay, so we are going to the Manage dashboard here and the Routes tool. And Auto Accept Route is one of those routes that we give you by, that we distribute. So you will find the Auto Accept Route. Question is, what do you have down here? What is it for? The purpose of this route is just to check this auto column. This auto column says automatically do the thumb up on sequence number 1. In effect, taking it out of whoever first gets the document, getting it out of that the inbox. So if you are finding a document that this is happening for, you can come in here and check and maybe add a doc type with subtype combination. As you can see, I have a lot of the budget ones down here, but not for manual revision, because maybe that one I do want to route. Also my forecast document and a few other ones. So this is what you would want to do, is just come in here. There's nothing in the details. You just want to add the doc type and make sure the auto is checked. Okay, the next situation, some of you do use predefined routes on documents such as pay request, and maybe you don't realize this one condition. Maybe you think that, well, if there's something that's high enough with a dollar amount that's high enough, that you actually need to go in there and manually change the route to send it to someone else, like an executive or someone else important there, that you have to do that. Well, you don't need to do this manually at all. What you would need to do is set up the predefined route to have that low or high dollar amount criteria. Let's go back into, again, we are in the Manage Route tools. My example is for pay request, and you should all know that you can have more than one predefined route for a doc type, as long as there's different conditions. The Spitfire would know which one to use. And I know that a number of you do use predefined routes with subtypes. I don't know if you all know that the low and high can be used as conditions also, and these are for the amounts on the document. And there's a few other ones here too, project, priority, status. Not sure that people kind of realize what the low and high mean, and these are dollars. So in this case, anything that's at least $9,000 would trigger this particular predefined route. That includes the senior executive. and you could put, a high number or both of them, one or both. The next situation is one where most of the time you select a specific choice from a drop-down list. And I have a little, except the subtype, we're going to talk about subtype next, but these are other drop-down lists that you have. And, you've got them all set up with the different choices, and maybe there's a blank choice to begin with, so everyone has to select something. And if most of the time, not make that the default. That makes sense, right? Now, the way to do that is to put a space in front of the text, because Spitfire uses the description in alphabetical order to decide how to list those. I'm going to go in here and just show you a little bit more about that. So I'm going into code maintenance source. All right, so I'm going to the code maintenance tool here. This is where you would be going. And you would be needing to go into the right code set. And what doc type did I say? Change order, okay. Now, if you do this change, because of the way that the UI is, you might not see on this field. Notice that there is a space before the S. Okay, so if you put the space in there, it will stay there even if you don't see it all the time. The other thing you should realize is that if there is a question mark on the code, and if there is one, do not get rid of it because that's used in other places. It's important to stay there. But what would happen is this is all usually blank, and therefore that would still come up first because two blanks would be before one blank. So all you would need to do is put in some other description on that, like no selection or make a selection or something that would make sense to you that would show up also on the list. But this way now the subcontractor request would be the first one that appears there, and if that's what you mostly want to select, you don't have to select it anymore because it will be there by default. Okay. So what about the subtype? The subtype is used as its own condition in so many other tools that if you want to make a default subtype, there's actually a different way to do that. And the way you would do that is through a rule. The doc type config subtype rule. Okay. Now we're over on the system admin in the rules tool. And we're going to doc type config. The subtype for commitment. Now, the result value, what you definitely want to do is show the code set on this because you need to put down the code. And when you do the code, make sure that you're looking at the right code set. So I'm looking at the right doc type commitment, but also I need to check the set name. And what I want is the subtype. It puts down doc status because most of the rules use doc status. Subtype. Okay, and so you can see here the code is sub for subcontract. That's what I put it on here because by default, my commitments are subcontracts. Now, of course, this is just the default, so people can still select when necessary. But most of the time, the people don't have to select. Okay, the next situation that I have here is on a particular doc type, you always select one attachment template to create a file. Now, I certainly know that when I'm creating templates to use, I keep them as attachment templates because I want to be able to have that control of selecting them when I want and checking them over. But if there is a template that you are confident is right, and you just always are, it's the one template that you're selecting, we can make things a little easier for you. Okay, what you're going to want to do is make the template, instead of being an attachment template, you want to make an attachment auto template. Okay, I'm going in here, I'm back on the Manage dashboard, and I'm on the Templates tool. I believe I was doing this for daily field reports. So I go over to daily field report, and I see that there is only the one template. Now, you might have more than one template, and this could still work as long as there are other criteria so that Spitfire would know without a doubt which is the one template to be used in the situation. Okay, if that's what you're dealing with here, you can change that type, even right from here, to attachment auto. What this will do is then automatically create the file so that you don't have to go and select it from the icon. This will happen as soon as you save the document. Prior to that, it will happen in the document. Created, attached it there, and moved on, and you don't have to be doing that manual selection. So it does save some little time, some clicks there. Also, there are other criteria, as I mentioned, for the templates, and we have all different types of templates. And so one of the things, for example, that I have seen is on your PAPTs, and people use different PAPTs for different customers. Now, customers put down there as a condition, and so it would certainly make sense to do so. Sometimes, like you can put it in the well, if you have a specific template type there in the tool. Okay, as here, so you can see it's on the customer, and you can put it down for the specific ones. And that means that when you are in, say, something like the PAPT, it's going to come up as the default. Again, you can always select something if you really needed to in that one exception, but it comes in there as a default, so you don't have to be selecting the right PAPT for the company if you've already matched them up like that. Okay. So my next situation here is if you are in a grid with columns, such as here's the doc list, and you always want to sort by a particular column that's not the default. Okay, I believe in a doc list like this, the commitment column, and it is defaulting sorting column. So let's say you, for a particular doc type, you always want to, that's one of the things you do. You go in there and you sort it because that's, you want things in a different order. Okay, so what you want to be doing here is using the extended field on the UI config tool. Okay, so again, let me talk a little bit more about that. We're going into the UI config tool, which is on the system admin. Okay, and I was doing a CCO. And I am going to do the project doc list because that's what I'm talking about right here. Now, if you go in and put in the doc type and the part, such as a project doc list, look to see if you already have a sort hint equals on the extended field, because you should only have one for that particular part. So therefore, if it's already being sorted by something, the best thing to do is to just change what comes after the equal sign. Now, in this case, I wanted my description column. I click on here, and I go look and see what the actual name of the field is. So I wanted description. I got the title from here, and so I say sort hint equals title. So even though it's coming on the commitment column row, this the one to be sorted on. It's the title, which is my description. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense to people. And if it doesn't, let me know. There's actually a newsletter article about how to do this also on here. Okay, so we were talking about grid columns outside a document. Well, what about if it's the items? And it's the same idea, that you want to sort the items by some other column. Again, by default, the item number is what's used, and if there's no item number, it's the very first column. So in this situation where on this item I have descriptions with numbers and I want to sort on that, it's kind of useless to me to have these item and cost codes because they're the same. So change what is going to be on. Okay, so last time we did the UI config tool. For the items though, there's actually a rule. It's the .item config sort rule. Okay. So on here, I come back over to the rule maintenance tool. .item config. And the default sort. Okay, so you would want to do it by the filter value, and again, you would need to know what's the actual name of the column that you are going to sort by, which you might need to do that either through the document or the UI config tool. The other example that I'm showing here is a computed field, because sometimes we can do that too, and this one happens to compute what is it, the
specification and paragraph.
Thank you, Dad. Yes, specifications and paragraph that are often used in submittal logs, and so this is like a special computer field that takes both of them and puts them together. So that's also possible, and might make sense on a submittal to sort by that column. So good. So here is one for setting a default. There are categories that go along with cost codes, and when you're adding items on some of your documents, there may be an account category that gets used again most of the time. It doesn't have to be all the time because people can still change it, but if it's most of the time, wouldn't it be great to have it there already instead of having to select it? So if you usually use a specific account category for your items, this is a good configuration. It's another rule. You want to set it through, it's another doc item config rule, in fact, the default account category. So I was just in my doc item config, default account category. Now, this under where does this come from? This comes from the account categories tool. So in order to know what you're going to put down here for the result value, you do need to go to account categories and look it up. Notice my message here that these values are maintained in someplace else in Dynamics. So they might be maintained in a different accounting system, but you would still be looking up to see what they are. So underline sub is the one that's here, and that's why that's my result value for that. And that means that this subcontractor cost is the one that's going to show up by default for all my cost codes. Okay. My commitment here, I'm being kind of specific on that one. Okay, well, a different situation. This is when you're on a doc type, again, a specific doc type, like change order, you always expand when adding an item. We have moved toward making everything editable on the grid view so that you don't have to expand items and you can just type everything across. Well, there might be situations, I can certainly think of at least one in a change order. Maybe you don't want to use a new SOV line on your change orders. You want to select a specific SOV line for your change item. which means you have to expand so that you can go do that. If this is, again, something that you do either all of the time or most of the time, you're going to want to have that item expanded so that you don't have to go click and expand it. I know it seems like it's just a one little click there, but it's one click that you don't need to do. So for this one, you would just need to turn on the doc item config expand when added rule. Now this one is a straightforward just check on, check off rule on that. So I don't think we need to go into the live Spitfire because I think you kind of get it. And so what it will do is anytime you add a new item, it puts it already into that expanded mode, to the detail view mode. Another rule here that I didn't do a whole slide for, it's the expand when single rule. And this one just means that if there is only the one item, show it expanded, show it in detail view, but not if there are multiple items. So I know some people only have one item on the certain of their documents, and again, if it's more convenient to have everything show all those detail fields, then maybe you want to turn that, use that rule. Again, that was an on-off rule. Okay. Here's the situation. Now, I should preface this by saying when it comes to things that can be done on new documents, there is so much that can be done with workflow scripts. Okay, this is something that's been around for a long, long time, even before workflow scripts got so robust, and it is still available to you. And it's sort of just a more straightforward, simple way of saying that if you want certain documents to be added to attached to certain files, documents when you create them, there could be a simpler way to do it instead of having you go find them from the catalog or from your computer, which really is not a good idea to have things taken from your computer. But the idea being, for example, you have a commitment and there's this writer as safety requirements file that should go on every commitment. So why should someone have to go and try to dig up that file and attach it? Why not have it attach it automatically? This one, we have these set of rules for this. They are adopted, as you can see in this picture here. And there are also just auto-attach and auto-attach filters. These are related rules to let you be very specific about what you're doing. The idea behind this is that you have one document, let's say in a template or data project that you're not using, and you attach the files onto that particular document. Now that is your source document. And then these rules would say, go look at that source document and attach whatever's attached to that document to the new document that you're just creating. And yes, I did take this from one of our client sites because they are using that, and so they have some good examples. The question might be this result value. Okay, where does that come from? Where do you? Well, I will show you that. Like I said, one way to do this is to have a template project that's just going to hold all the information. So it's your source. And on here, so let's say I have and it's going to, have whatever problem. And so once I have everything set up over here, what I need to do is get the data PK. And I think certainly anyone who has sent an email to support learns that we're always asking for data PKs. And so right here, you double click on the powered by Spitfire, and then you would find the data PK up here. And that is the string that you would use in the result value for any of those rules. Let's see what's next. Okay, so situation, when you're creating new documents of a certain doc type, you usually change the due date to several days hence. Now this works when you're changing due dates to a specific number of days hence, not, that it's just kind of on the fly, whatever you want to make up. When you have a set number that you can say, all right, every 7 days in the future, or 5 days in the future, or 2 weeks, or whatever it is, instead of having someone come and change the date, you can set this due date. You do this in the doc type config do in days rule. Okay, so this one just takes a straightforward number as the result value, and it's whatever number. Due in day 7 means 7 days after the date that the document is created. So it puts that date in there as default. Again, any of those dates can be changed after the fact, but at least it eliminates actually come up and calculate it in your head and figure it out and put it in there. There is another rule that is somewhat related to that. It's down here, due days relative. Now that one is just an on-off rule. And what that one means is if you change the date on a document by a certain number of days, then change the due date by that same number of days. So if you're changing the date on your document by 5 days, by 5 days. I don't know how many of you are actually changing the dates on documents, but in case somebody out there is going, ooh, I do that, due date for relative might be helpful. Okay, let's see what's next. Okay, the next one is when you're creating a project setup, you always select the site on the address tab, and I can see why you would want to do this because we tell you that the address there is particularly the zip code on the site address is the one that's being used for weather conditions. So it's probably something that you want to do on the project setup document. And so if you go over to the address tab and the first thing you do is go select site as the type, when you first go to the address tab, and you don't have to select that. And the way you do that is with the doc type config first address type rule. So this is one of those little rules that you might not have realized is there. And then it's going to need the code set for the address type. So when you're looking at what to put here in your result value, you're going to make sure that you select the right doc type and select address type as the code set, and then you want to appear on that particular document. And this is, I think, good for not only project setup, but if you have any custom doc types where you're also using an address tab, you want to set it up so that the address that matters the most, or the one that you're going to fill out first, is the default. Okay. This one. When creating a document, it doesn't need to be routed. You go right away to the attachments tab. Right now, this is what Spitfire is. It's using a little bit of trying to use some logic in terms of setting defaults here. And what it says by default is that if there are attachments on your document, it's going to show you the attachments tab. Otherwise, it's going to show you the route detail tab. But you might know that there are times when there's a predefined route or something, and you don't need to worry about the route detail tab, but you do need to attach files. That's what you do when you get onto that particular document. So it's one of those simple things. Again, it's just a tab. It's not a big deal of a lot of clicks, but it's still one more click that you don't need to do. So that's the situation. You probably want to go to the doc type config first AXR tab rule. And the result value either says attachment or route. You can make it be route even if you have attachments, because again, Spitfire, like I said, is going to try to use some logic as to which one to show, but maybe you always wanted to show attachments, or you always wanted to start out on the route detail tab. So either one, you can set it up again by specific doc type, if you find that one of them. Okay, well, we're still down there on the Attachments and Route Details tab. Maybe you don't like paging on these tabs and you would prefer scrolling. This would be particularly true if most people are getting onto the document on like a tablet or a mobile device, because scrolling is a lot easier. But even if you're on your computer or on your workstation, you might just prefer to do that instead of having to either page on it, and yes, I know we have that icon at the bottom where you can maximize, but if you find yourself always maximizing whenever there's a number of rows, then why not make that be the default? Now, if you're making this the default, it applies to both Attachments tab and the Route Detail tab, either for a doc type or as I have it here for everything, just because I happen to like that. I just like to show everything maximized, and I like to scroll instead of having to page through things. Okay, so that's an easy solution. Okay. And this one basically is when you have that leads to the creation of a linked document, you have many clicks for the process. And so what I'm talking about in this example is I have an issue document, and let's say it's my SOP that anytime I have an issue document, or not every time, but often enough, that it ends up on a change order. And what I'm going to need to do here after I fill out my issue document is I'm going to close the document. I have to come over here and select the change order. Select the create new icon to create the change order. And then once I have the change order, I have to come down into the Attachments tab and select Attach an Issue so that the two documents can be linked together. Okay, so if you're going to be doing all that, you definitely want to make it easier on yourself. Okay, what you're going to do is use Next Doc Flow rules to streamline this process. And again, there's a number of rules that you might want to use to do this. I'm showing 3 of them here. Basically, it's indicating the target type that I want to change order from an issue. This next one, source doc state flags, is showing when I'm allowed to do that, and I've made this for in process, this is fine, and that I do want to link the document. So I want to show you, if I go up here, I had an issue document that I started, but to tell you sort of the end result, why this is a lot easier, what I'm doing that I don't have to go look for anything else right from here. I can just click on create a change order. On the issue change orders, is it on the Attachments tab, and on the change order, the issues on the Attachments tab. So they're linked together, and you can see how this will be much easier, not only saving you some clicks, but also just being easier to teach people that, when you are at a certain point, just go up there to the options and create the next document. So this went a little faster than I thought it would, but basically I want to leave you with the idea that aside from all of these things, which I think any system keep in mind, notice, see where is the thing that you're always clicking the same thing and you're always doing something and you're thinking, I wish this could be automated. I wish I didn't have to do this. And then either, like I said, talk to people there or come to us, because we can use workflow scripts also on JavaScript code, and we can pretty much make it happen if it's something that Spitfire can know when to do it. So at this point, I guess I would open it up and just say, does anyone have any questions or anything that they'd like to see a little bit closer?
Unmuted.
This would be when you would unmute if you want to ask anything. Well, I hope this is, yep.
This is Seema from UC Davis.
Hi.
Hi. Is there a way to save a click by, you don't have to click to enable attachments tab, so we don't have to save it or enable that tab. Instead, we can directly drop it in the attachments.
So let me see. You mean when the icons are gray, you want them to automatically be lit up so that you can attach stuff? Sure. I think we will do that. I guess I'll say it.
What version of the Spitfire are you on? You have been in 2017, right, Stan?
Absolutely. That's what the whole, unless you have turned on turned off persist new documents, that should automatically be happening. That was the whole reason we did that. Yeah, I'll check that. We did do some changes on that. I'll check.
Because yes, that is definitely something you should. We made it so that you no longer have to save a document in order to be able to attach files.
Okay, we'll check those settings.
Hey Dave, this is Shannon. We did turn that off because because people were going in there and then exiting out of those documents, and then it was saving like a fake document, if you will. So that might be why we're having to do that at your site.
Training issue, really. Sounds like.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else have any other questions? I'm all ears.
That was one of my favorites, is that I think that a lot of people would like to have the attachment tab always, the attachments on the bottom always be the default, because people work with attachments so much more than they work with routing on a day-to-day basis.
That's an easy fix.
That gets my vote.
Well, if there are no other questions, I will just point out that you are all going to want to come back next month, because we're doing our What's New in version 2019. And so you should not only be here, but you should let others in your companies. Sometimes different people, of different levels should come to these webinars to learn about this. So we're pretty excited about that. So we hope to see you all in, what is next month, March? In March.
And I'll just say that if anyone was paying attention, they would have seen that you were using version 2019 the whole time.
Yeah, I was, there was at least one thing there or two, but yeah, I didn't want to emphasize 2019 too much, because when people come back next month.
Thanks, everybody.
Well, thank you all, and I hope this gave you some ideas. And like I said, when things come up doing your work, whenever in the future, and you need some help with it, no.
Thanks, Sonny.